Hello, boys and girls. I've been seeing a lot of the elementary school teachers reading books to kids, so I thought I would do the same thing, except with one that I wrote myself. So this is the Memestory of Henry VIII. This is going to be a brief history of Henry VIII, written and read by me, Mrs. Fissler, using memes as the only form of illustrations. Once upon a time, there was a prince and a princess. They were to be wed at the ripe age of 14 to form an alliance between England and Spain. Prince Arthur of Wales, the eldest son of Henry VII of England and Elizabeth of York, and Princess Catherine of Aragon, the youngest daughter of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain. Sadly, about a year after they wed, Arthur died from an unknown illness. This meant that his younger brother, Henry VIII, was the new heir to the English throne. Having a new heir to the throne is great, but what about the alliance that was formed with Spain through Catherine of Aragon? Well, Henry and Catherine's parents had a solution for that. Henry's dad said, "We'll have my 10-year-old son marry your 16-year-old Catherine of Aragon daughter." Totally normal. Since Catherine and Arthur never had children, this was completely acceptable. So Henry VIII and Catherine were married on June 11th, 1509. Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon were happily married for some time. Although he was happy with Catherine, the only thing that Henry truly wanted in life was a male heir to the throne. Roses are red, violets are blue. I should like to make a male heir with you. Over the next 9 years, Catherine of Aragon gave birth to 6 children, 3 girls and 3 boys. Out of those 6 kids, only 1 daughter made it past 2 months old. As you can imagine, Henry was not happy with this outcome. Henry was torn and didn't know what to do. All he wanted was a male heir to the throne. He started to see that that was not going to happen. Although Henry was a smart young man, the only logical idea he could come up with was to divorce Catherine and find a different wife who would give him a male heir. So, Henry asked the Pope for a divorce. King Henry VIII may or may not have taken a few too many blows to the head during jousting tournaments. However, it did lead to some interesting stories in history. The Pope refused to grant Henry a divorce because it went against the religion. So, in Henry's mind, there was only one logical solution for his lack of a male heir problem. He would just start a new church. This is now the Church of England. Henry started his new church, the Anglican Church, and cut all ties with the Pope and the Roman Catholic Church. Henry said that in the Church of England, divorce was allowed. Goodbye, Catherine of Aragon. Rule number 2, Henry named himself the supreme head of the Church of England. Anglicanism based its belief on the Bible, but the head of the church was the interpreter of its meaning. So you're telling me you're the supreme head of the church? Yup. Henry divorced Catherine, but not before his next wife was lined up. Enter Anne Boleyn. Henry and Anne were married and got pregnant right away. Yay! However, Anne gave birth to a baby girl named Elizabeth. She gave birth 2 more times to stillborn babies. Henry still had no male heir to the throne. Henry was convinced that Anne Boleyn would never give him a son. Although he just started a new church to be able to divorce his first wife, he felt that 2 divorces back to back wouldn't look so good for him. So he came up with a new plan. He was going to tell people that Anne Boleyn cheated on him. Nailed it. This was considered treason and punishable by death. Henry VIII had Anne Boleyn beheaded. But don't worry, he already had his next wife lined up. Jane Seymour was Henry's 3rd wife. He loved her a lot. She was truly the love of his life. Soon after they were married, Jane got pregnant. Yay! It was a boy, little Prince Edward VI, the new heir to the throne of England. Thank the Lord. Henry VIII was ecstatic, the happiest he'd ever been. He had the love of his life and his male heir, but this bliss would not last long. Just 9 days after giving birth to Prince Edward, Jane Seymour died from complications due to childbirth. Henry was devastated. Even though Henry was very depressed over losing the love of his life, he knew he needed to remarry for the country's sake. He wanted to make another alliance. He was not interested in dating at all, so he left that up to his trusted advisors. His advisors asked people from all over to send pictures of their eligible bachelorettes who held a title. Henry chose a drawing of the beautiful, to be explained on the next slide, Anne of Cleves, who was a duchess in Germany. There was one thing that people struggled to understand about Anne of Cleves. Although Anne of Cleves was not attractive at all, the picture that was painted of her looked absolutely beautiful. Boys and girls, I consider this mishap to be the first example of catfishing. When Henry finally saw and married Anne of Cleves in person, he said she was hideous. He was unimpressed by her altogether. He then said something along the lines of, "She looks like a horse. I want a divorce." So, Henry divorced his fourth wife, Anne of Cleves. He soon after married Catherine Howard. Catherine Howard was young and absolutely beautiful. When I say young, I mean 30 years younger than Henry, to be precise. Yikes. Remember how Henry VIII made up the rumor that Anne Boleyn was cheating on him to have her beheaded? Well, this time it wasn't just a rumor. Catherine Howard really did cheat on Henry VIII. Bold move, little girl. Young and dumb, I guess. You guessed it. Henry VIII had Catherine Howard beheaded for treason. But not before he had his next wife picked out, of course. In steps, Catherine Parr, the luckiest of all Henry's wives. By this point in his life, Henry's health had begun to decline. He was approximately 400 pounds and very unhealthy, as you can imagine. They're pretty sure that he had type 2 diabetes. He had gout and pus-filled boils all over his legs. Catherine Parr took care of Henry for the rest of his life until he died in 1547. Throughout his life, Henry always blamed not being able to have multiple sons on his wives. After Henry's death, his one and only male heir, Edward VI, became the King of England at just 9 years old. But then, tragedy struck. King Edward died just 6 years later in 1553 of what is believed to be tuberculosis. Boys and girls, now is time to learn the definition of karma. Karma is the result of a person's actions. According to the theory of karma, what happens to a person happens because they caused it with their actions. Henry VIII. So now what? King Henry, dead. King Edward, dead. The next heir to the throne was Henry's oldest daughter, Mary, with his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. Ironically enough, Mary was a strict Catholic and tried to restore Catholicism to England in place of the Church of England. Mary decided that an appropriate punishment for English people who were practicing her father's religion instead of Catholicism was to burn them alive. Over the next 5 years that Mary was the Queen of England, she burned over 300 people at the stake for heresy. This earned her the nickname Bloody Mary. In 1558, Mary died and her half-sister Elizabeth became queen. Elizabeth was the daughter of Henry's second wife, Anne Boleyn, who he nonchalantly beheaded. No big deal. Elizabeth is often thought of as the greatest queen to ever rule England. During her reign, she established Protestantism in England, defeated the Spanish Armada, maintained peace inside her previously divided country, and created an environment where the arts flourished. When Elizabeth died in 1603, the son of her first cousin, who she had killed, that's a story for another day, became the King of England. This is where the Tudor line of succession ended. The end. I hope you enjoyed my actually 100% true story.